This budget update and this government is all about responsible economic management. Responsible economic management, it's what puts downward pressure on inflation and eases the cost of living. And because of our efforts, we are getting the budget in much better nick and making more room for our priorities, and that's what these numbers that we are releasing today show. Our strategy over the past 18 months has delivered an historic turnaround in the budget position, but we know that there is still much more work to do. Our government's economic plan is at its core about three things: easing cost of living pressures, repairing the budget and investing in the foundations of growth in our economy. Now, we understand that Australians are doing it tough and our economy is slowing, and that's why we are rolling out tens of billions of dollars in cost of living relief. It's why we are fixing the budget and why we are making welcome and encouraging progress in this fight against inflation. Now, last year we delivered the first surplus in 15 years. This year, a much smaller deficit, and you're seeing less debt and smaller deficits over the 4 years of the forward estimates as well. And because of our efforts, we have less debt than any major advanced economy. Now, the mid-year update that we're releasing today shows that the government has returned 92% of upward revisions to revenue since the May budget and 88% of revenue upgrades since we came to office. We have also identified almost $10 billion in savings, which means almost $50 billion in savings over the life of our government, and I know Katie will want to elaborate on that in a moment. And if you combine that with some modest tax changes, we've identified $11.6 billion in budget improvements, which total $72.7 billion since we came to office. So a big part of what we are banking today are the upward revisions to revenue, but there are also decisions in this MyEFO to substantially improve the budget position, including when it comes to savings and reprioritisations in the budget. Because of our efforts, we have almost wiped out this year's deficit. We are now forecasting a much smaller deficit of $1.1 billion in 23-24. This is an improvement of $12.8 billion compared to the budget, and it is a $55.4 billion turnaround compared to what we inherited for this year. We are not yet forecasting a second surplus, but we are within striking distance. We have given ourselves a chance, but we aren't there yet, and we've been deliberately cautious and deliberately conservative. We've seen in recent times, under our predecessors, what happens when you overpromise and underdeliver. We've been determined to take a different approach to this, cautious and conservative when it comes to revenue upgrades, because of the uncertainty and the volatility in the global economy and also in our own domestic economy. Now, over the 5 years to 26-27, the underlying cash balance is improving by a cumulative $211.4 billion relative to what was expected at election time. Gross debt as a share of GDP is expected to peak lower at 35.4% in 27-28 before declining to 32.1% by the end of the medium term. We are expecting to avoid $145 billion in interest costs, and debt is projected to be $450 billion lower by the end of the medium term because of decisions that we've taken, whether it's banking or saving or in other parts of the budget. So through our spending restraint and by banking upward revisions to revenue, our economic and fiscal strategy is working alongside monetary policy to ease inflationary pressures in our economy. We know that Australians are under the pump. We know there's no shortage of challenges when it comes to the economy, global and domestic, and the budget itself. GDP growth is forecast to moderate in the near term and unemployment is expected to tick up. These are the inevitable consequences of higher interest rates, moderating but high inflation and global economic uncertainty. Inflation is moderating, but it's still too high. Global oil prices drove a near-term uptick in the inflation forecast, but Treasury still expects inflation to return to its target on the same time frame as it expected at budget time. Despite these challenges, we are making welcome and encouraging progress when it comes to the economy. Unemployment is near historic lows. We've seen the longest consecutive run below 4% since monthly records began. The participation rate's at record highs. More than 620,000 jobs have been created since we came to office, which is a record for a first-term government. And our employment growth is faster than all the major advanced economies. Our wages growth has picked up to its fastest annual rate since 2009. We've seen 2 consecutive quarters of real wages growth. And annual real wage growth is expected to return in early 2024. So the government has 4 big priorities as we finish 2023. Easing the pressure on Australians, strengthening Medicare, building a future made in Australia, and securing our place in a world of churn and change. Every one of those things is advanced by the responsible economic management, which is at the very core of this mid-year budget update that you have before you now. Responsible economic management is a defining feature of this budget update, and it's a defining feature of our government as well, and we're making progress, as you can see in the documents that we are releasing. I want to thank Katie Gallagher in particular, but also all of the ERC colleagues and the Cabinet and the government more broadly. There's a lot of collective effort that goes into delivering such a big improvement in the budget position. So I appreciate Katie's work in particular. We're going to hear from her now. Then I wanted to cover off on 2 more issues and then take your questions. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks very much, Jim. Well, the MyEFO document we're releasing today continues our focus on quality spending and looking for savings and reprioritising within existing budgets. In our first budget in October, we started this work. We continued it in May, and you'll see, and you do see more of it in MyEFO. There are savings and reprioritising across government, and I would like to acknowledge and thank ministers in particular who have worked with us on achieving this. They understand the importance of getting the budget in much better shape and ensuring that we use resources efficiently, and by accepting this approach, it's an important part of our fiscal strategy and the priority we place as responsible economic managers. In today's MyEFO, we've found savings and reprioritisation of $9.8 billion. This takes the total saves and reprioritisations to just under $50 billion since we came to government. Of that $50 billion, billions are found in this financial year, which of course helps in our fight against inflation. Our approach also allows us to ensure that we're able to resource urgent, legacy and terminating spending, which continues in this MyEFO as we work through the budgeting approach of the former government, allocating resources to where they're needed most and being honest and upfront about the extent of that investment that's required. Of the net spend in this MyEFO of $5.2 billion, about 99% of that relates to unavoidable, urgent or dealing with legacy issues. So things like closing the pandemic event visa, our continued response to COVID-19, our response to red fire ants, visa backlogs, Services Australia customer support, the robo-debt response as well, and you can see those outlined in the measures. And although this is not a mini budget, we have focused also on continuing our progress towards women's economic equality. So this update sees the full rollout of gender responsive budgeting, and I'd like to thank the Office for Women and the Public Service for stepping up and responding to this government priority. There is extra resourcing for the additional changes to the paid parental leave scheme, which were recommended by the Women's Economic Equality Task Force. There's extra resourcing for some women's safety measures and further work being done on the Parents Next program. There is also the funding for the Play Our Way women's sports program, which is about ensuring women have access to facilities that encourages their engagement with sport. So the short summary is fiscally responsible, finding savings, reprioritising where we can, resourcing those urgent areas and making room as we continue to respond to those big spending pressures like the interest payments on our debt, NDIS, defence, health and aged care. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Katie. 2 other issues quickly and then happy to take your questions. First of all, Tropical Cyclone Jasper expected to make landfall in the next few hours in North and far North Queensland. Checked in on my sister who lives in Cairns this morning in a typical Queensland understated way. She said it was getting a bit breezy. Queenslanders are very tough people, particularly in the north and the far north. I think the whole country has the people of North and Far North Queensland in their thoughts today as they batten the hatches for what will be another severe weather event in a part of the world which has its share of severe weather events. So to all of those terrific Queenslanders battening the hatches up north today, the rest of the country's thoughts are with you. Our Minister Murray Watt is working closely with the Queensland authorities, and obviously the federal authorities are engaged as well. Muzz will keep you all updated about developments as they emerge, but the state government, the Commonwealth government, are working very closely together to make sure that the people of North Queensland and Far North Queensland get the support that they need and deserve. Our advice to the people in the affected areas is to stay across developments, whether that's online or on the radio. Make sure that you are following advice so that people can do the best to keep you safe. There are a number of shelters which have opened, which people are obviously welcome to access. But make the right decisions based on the right advice. Keep you and your loved ones safe. The Commonwealth Government and the State Government will be there for you during and after what is expected to be some really nasty weather up north. Last point I wanted to make was about the new incoming Premier of Queensland. We really look forward to working with Stephen Miles, his new Deputy, Cameron Dick, his team, including Shannon Fentiman, the new and renewed Queensland Labor team. We will work closely with them as we work closely with the governments of all of the states and territories. But I wanted to congratulate Stephen. He's someone I know really well, and Cameron and Shannon and all of the team, some really good people doing the best for the wonderful people of Queensland. We will work closely with them when the new arrangements are formalised on Friday or sometime after.